We have two sets of interviews for this episode. The first one is with Mikhail and Billy from the online music project Love Raptor. You can find them on YouTube, and every week they put out a different cover of mostly classic songs. I guess we could say now, classic rock and pop songs. We brought them on because late last year, I got clued into them doing two Billy Joel covers. And we thought it would be cool to have them on, not only to talk a little about Billy, but also talk about where they sit in the music industry today. You know, if you go on YouTube, you'll find a lot of these bands doing covers like this and really carving out an identity for themselves and recasting these songs in new lights for a new generation. It's a nice way to look to the past with the covers they're doing and also to the future.
And what they're doing with these songs is that they're really exposing a new audience to these great artists. So here is Mikhail and Billy from Love Raptor.
We're on the line with bass player and producer Mikhail Pivovarov and guitarist Billy Ruegger from Love Raptor. They're a loose collective of musicians that perform funk-inspired covers of popular songs. You can find them on YouTube, where they've published a new song each week for the past few years. Each video features a different combination of players, and their catalog runs the gamut from Sam Cooke and Carole King to Katy Perry and Lizzo. We're talking with them today in particular about their reworkings of two Billy Joel songs, She's Got Away and Movin' Out. Guys, thanks for talking with us today.
Thanks so much, man. It's really awesome to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So tell us about how Love Raptor got started.
I am a music producer and musician and all sorts of things. You know, I've been doing this for like 15 years. Most of my work has been working on other people's music, producing or engineering or mixing or, you know, basically working within somebody else's framework or somebody else's proclivities. And I kind of got to a point a few years ago where I was like, man, I forgot what I sound like. I forgot what it's like to just do stuff without any restrictions. And I kind of figured a lot of the folks that I was making records with at the time kind of felt the same way. All of these like session players and cats like that. So it kind of started off as this thing of, you know, reaching out to some of my friends and saying, hey guys, do you want to like just get together and do something really goofy? Kind of something without any restrictions, something where, you know, everybody's opinions are equally valid and nobody has to kind of ask for permission or make sure you're working within somebody else's framework. You know, we don't have to keep the artist happy. We're all the artist, you know, when we get together. I just started reaching out to cats that I was working on records with, and Billy and I had actually met because kind of we live in the same area. I used to bring clients to this really nice eatery down the street. I would see Billy playing music there all the time, kind of like as the, you know, featured artist during like the lunch hour or whatever. And I'm always blown away by his playing, but we had never really gotten together on anything. And when I started this project, Billy was actually one of the first cats I reached out to, and I said, hey man, you want to come over, do this? He said yes, and, you know, 3 years later, here we are.
You had mentioned that Billy's has been in most of the videos. Do you have any other members that are mostly core members, or is it really rotating cast after that?
I'm the only person that's in everything. Kind of started out as a thing of like, hey, I'm going to really experiment and see what it's like putting a lot of people together. But as we went on and did this a lot, you know, there are certain people that I just, you know, absolutely love and gel with musically and really lean on. Bill, you're probably what, in like 80%, 90% of the videos?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Also helps I live down the street, right?
Yeah,
I'm not coming from like New York to, yeah.
Billy is like 10 minutes away. It's great.
Yeah.
There's another cat, Sam Oliver. He's the drummer in the She's Got Away, and he's on hand percussion on Movin' Out. Sam is probably the most featured drummer in Love Raptor. He's probably in about half the videos. He's incredible. Okay. Another drummer that is with us quite a lot is Mikhail. Brooklyn, New York people might recognize him as the drummer for Sammy Ray and the Friends sometimes. Tommy Weeks is on horn. He's in She's Got Away. Greg Mattson is with us on guitar a decent amount. There's a pretty big rotating cast, but you know, there's like 5 or 6 cats that are more common than others.
Tell me about the process for choosing songs.
Honestly, there isn't one. You know, I have this like running list on my phone where I'll listen to a song and I'll go, oh man, wouldn't it be really cool to cover that? There's next to no prep work. Actually, I would say there is no prep work for any of this. The idea behind all of this is freedom and improvisation and conversation live in the moments. With a few key exceptions, mostly because of the pandemic, we haven't prearranged anything.
Really?
Yeah, nothing is prearranged. So like all of the awesome stuff that Billy's playing, all of the great vocal lines, some of the reharmonizations, all of that's happening in the moment. We get together on a day, like I'll kind of call a bunch of people and I'll put together a group. And sometimes like I'll call Billy and I'll be like, hey man, like who haven't we seen in a while? Matt Nakoa, who plays keys and sang on She's Got Away. He's one of our favorites to jam with. He's an incredibly musical guy. It's really tough to get him in because he's usually on the road a lot, so it's like really a huge treat when he's coming through town. But yeah, we'll get together and we'll kind of just like sit around and say, okay, hey guys, what songs do you want to do?
I was pretty sure somebody was thinking this out ahead of time.
Right.
They really sound very cohesive.
Yeah, we're never reading. Most of the time, we're actually reharmonizing. We'll start listening to the song, and then we'll say, okay, cool. Like, we'll listen to maybe like 10 seconds. Usually, Billy will put on his AirPods. He'll figure out like what the song actually is supposed to sound like. We'll play that for about a minute, and then we'll throw that all out the window and completely start, rewriting and reharmonizing and creating a new arrangement around it. Billy, did we keep any of She's Got Away? Is any of that like close to what the Joel arrangement is?
Chordally speaking and stuff, it is. I think that one's one of the instances where we were closer to the original recording than some others,
Mm-hmm.
Well, harmonically, like vibe-wise, I mean, we turned it on its head.
I mean, like vocally, Matt definitely took a lot of liberties, but just from like a basic song structure, that one's pretty close.
Right. So that does happen sometimes, but there's no real formula to what we do. It's kind of whatever feels cool. For the most part, we just try to change the song to make it our own. In the case of She's Got Away, the song's a piano ballad with very minimal arrangement. So the fact that we put a funk groove behind it, we put a band on it, like really doing these intricate, funky grooves, that was like the big change. Sometimes the big change on a song is, okay, cool, the song has a very simple like 1-4-5 chord progression. Let's change it around completely. If it's got a complicated chord progression, let's make it incredibly simple. So it's more like a James Brown thing where you just live on the one. Just kind of whatever we're feeling in the moment. And the arrangement.
It sounds like a big running theme is just to not overthink it.
Absolutely. And we get lost in the weeds sometimes where we'll start overthinking it. And we all just kind of like look at each other, and like usually me or Billy or somebody who's been like really driving it for a minute will be like, guys, let's pull back and let's do about 5% of what we're doing. Let's simplify. And that's usually when the stuff gets like really cool and interesting.
It's funny you actually mentioned that because, we've talked with some of the folks who worked on Billy's records, and it's a very similar thing. Billy is very into the spontaneity. I mean, most of those basic tracks were done live with everyone in the room. The vocals are live, everything. And he's the kind of guy who doesn't want to overdo it until he hates it.
As a record producer, I've mostly made records in the last couple of years. I mean, the way that you do them nowadays is, people will kind of track separately, or maybe you'll do the rhythm section and then we'll overdub some guitars and then we'll overdub some vocals. And a part of this, for me personally, was kind of doing an homage, a throwback to the old style of recording, kind of the 70s, the 60s, when everybody had to be in the same room and you just played the frickin' song. The Motown way of doing things, the Stax Records way of doing things, and the way that Billy Joel's records were made. It's not to say that the other way, the overdub way, isn't valid. I mean, Les Paul certainly was onto something when he, created multi-tracking, but there's a magic that happens when musicians get into a room and really have a conversation. And I find that when you do it the other way, you're just trying to emulate a conversation, and the best you can do is get a simulacrum, but it's never quite the same. Like, there's something about that vibe. There's like something when we're grooving in a room and when we get into a deep groove, even if it's a simple thing, I mean, it's a hell of a feeling. For
sure. I don't think you can replace that. That being said, though, like when quarantine happened, we were kind of forced to do things separately. We kind of went to town with, overdubs and adding more people into the mix. And that was cool because it did open up new possibilities. But I'm definitely looking forward to when we can all be in a room kind of doing that thing again.
Absolutely. Most of our recordings are done in a room live. No edits, no cuts, no overdubs, nothing. That's just what happened when we played the song live. And I mean, you see the videos. Like, it's most of our videos are one shot. That's just it. We just played the song and that was it.
So when you guys are doing it, everybody in the room at once, how long was that session? How long would you guys be together to get the final product?
We come up with an arrangement in like half an hour, 45 minutes. We get together, once the mics go hot. I think it takes us some songs longer than others, but usually it's under 45 minutes of arranging and about half an hour to an hour of tracking. Sometimes it goes much faster. Mm-hmm. We've had sessions where we just kept the first take and said, yep, that's it. We got it.
Yeah, I'm curious then about Movin' Out because of the two songs, especially the singer's energy just seems so much more sort of already revved up and going once that that one started. I'm wondering if that was like maybe a few takes in and everybody was a little more warmed up.
So that day, Movin' Out was the second song we did. The first tune we did a Fleetwood Mac song. But also Sammy Ray, the singer in that, she's just incredible. I mean, she has her own band, Sammy Ray and the Friends, and she's just an outstanding front woman, incredible singer, songwriter. She just has an amazing energy about her. That all of the takes, from the minute that I said, okay, cool, camera rolling, she was just on.
Maybe this is a tricky question now, knowing that you guys just kind of dive headfirst into it in the moment. But I'm curious if, as you get into these songs, if you uncover any qualities about them for yourselves that sort of surprise you or that you really find that you enjoy once you get into the, the melody or the chord choices and things like that.
We've taken some songs that I would never consider playing on my own. I mean, I'll do solo cover gigs, so I play a lot of covers, but we'll take ones that are just totally not my wheelhouse, but we kind of make them our own and have a lot of fun with them. So yeah, I would say that kind of in the process, I've gotten a new appreciation for certain songs that I didn't know so well. But if you learn a song, you play it, and you make a memory around the song with other people, the song has a new association for you. It's almost beyond just the musical components, it's you learn to enjoy it better because it becomes personal at that point.
Breaking down a song that is deceptively simple, or that you think is simple upon first hearing it, the way that we work on some of the more complicated stuff, like some of the Billy Joel and some of the Elton John, for example. It's funny because the session will usually start with, once we've picked the song, we start doodling around on it for a second. Billy will put in his AirPods and he'll just kind of sit there in this meditative trance for a moment. And he's listening and figuring out the chord structure by ear. And then he'll kind of go, okay, so this is what they're doing. And there's always this moment of, oh, wow, that's way cooler and way more complicated than I've ever given that song credit for.
Backing up a little, I know you mentioned you kind of picked the songs off the cuff. Do you remember what inspired these two songs, Movin' Out and She's Got Away?
She's Got Away, that was Matt saying, let's do a Billy Joel song, right?
That was definitely Matt saying, hey, why don't we give this one a shot?
That's Matt Nakoa, the keyboard player and singer in that particular video. That was just him saying yeah, man, I love this song. Nobody covers it. Let's go. A similar thing with Movin' Out. That was Sammy Ray saying, man, I really love this song. Let's give it a whirl and see what happens. Sometimes it's me, saying, hey, I really want to try this song. Let's see what happens. But really, most of the time, it's whatever the singer is really feeling that day and whatever they're most excited about. Because ultimately, what we do as a backing band, what we do as the rhythm section, we can slot into almost anything, but the lyrics, the melody, the emotion of the song is going to come from the singer, and they have to really dig the song and really want to do it and really be into it. So it's usually we're doing a song that the singer is, really enjoying or knows really well.
Leading up to the 70s, when singer-songwriters like James Taylor and Billy Joel were coming to the forefront as composing the music that they sang, before that, it was people like Carole King writing these songs for other people. And of course, even before that, it was the Great American Songbook, where you had this core of songs that everybody did. And for a long time, I think that was out of fashion. The singer was pretty much always connected to the song.
That was the big thing that started happening in the 60s and 70s of, hey, I wrote this song and I'm going to sing it. But the reality is that in the background of all of that, that songwriter position and the songwriter composing for other people, that was always happening. I mean, it's still happening. Most pop music happens that way. I mean, you take a look at writing credits on literally any top 40s pop record. It's very rare that the songwriter will usually have a credit on it, but a lot of the times that's actually a business arrangement. They didn't necessarily do any of the composing. And then there are guys like, for example, Charlie Puth, who writes and sings all of his own stuff. It's not so much that it's gone in and out of fashion. I think it's always been happening. It's just kind of goes in and out of vogue. It depends on what, is the singer-songwriter the more popular thing right now, or is the singer who has a songwriter behind them the more popular thing right now?
To that point of that idea of the singer-songwriter and singers with songwriters going in and out of vogue, that this sort of new crop of video-based bands, or I guess YouTube-based bands like you guys, or Postmodern Jukebox, I think was the first one that I became aware of. Scary Pockets is another. We didn't really see that for a while, where you might find 5 different covers of a Billy Joel song or an Elton John song.
Yeah, I mean, that's really huge right now. Okay, so history lesson for a second. Let's just go back about 30 years. Before the advent of home recording technology, there were gatekeepers to the music industry. Even to get into the studio, it was so prohibitively expensive to go into a recording studio and record your song that you basically needed to have a record contract. And the way that you got a record contract with somebody, you either know somebody or somebody hears you that says, okay, great, you're awesome, let's pursue this and let's build this out and let's see what happens. Now, basically, for $1,000, anybody can get a basic computer, a microphone, and a recording interface and some software. Everybody is putting things out. And because of that, there's such a massive amount of new material out there, which it's a beautiful thing because it means that you can absolutely get your song out there. That if you have a voice and if you have a story to tell, you can get it out there. The flip side of that is that so can literally everybody else. So you tend to get lost in this sea of voices. One of the ways that we try to stand out actually is by kind of pulling on your heartstrings a little bit. You play something that's familiar, a cover song that, you know, people will love, but then you put your own spin on it and you say like, well, you're hearing my voice because you're hearing what in this case, this group of musicians, you hear how we would interpret that song, and our interpretation becomes the hook. You know, once they get through the door of, here's this familiar song that you already know, like here's this Billy Joel song that you love. The name of the song is going to be the reason that they click, but the sound of the band is going to be the reason that they stick around. And that's really, the record industry has always done that. I mean, you know, all the way back to Sinatra singing American standards. I mean, we're just basically singing the modern American songbook.
What have you thought of the reception to Love Raptor? It sounds like sort of a conscious thing. I'm sure you knew what was working, what was trending in the industry at the time, but at the same time, it seems like it was also, you know, a good combination of what you wanted to do in terms of getting together and just, you know, feeling your way through classic songs and putting your own spin on them for the project.
So, our friend Mike said something really interesting to me, I think. Billy, I think it was at the Sam Bear session when he said that, man, you know, like Love Raptor is a music scene. It's a community, you know.
Yeah.
And when he called it a scene, I was like, oh, wow, that's awesome. I never thought of it that way. But, you know, there's something like 60 musicians that have been a part of this project. And what's been really cool to me is to see how collaborations kind of happen out of that. So sometimes, you know, we'll have like 2 people on a session and then a month later I'll find out that, and then that guy went and played on her record that she was making in the studio because she like really loved playing with, you know, like really cool stuff like that will happen. As far as like a reception, I will be honest, I did not care one lick about what people were going to think when I started making the calls. It's really awesome when people like dig it, and I loved when you guys reached out and said, hey, we really dug your stuff, can we talk about it? Like, that's all amazing. It's not why we do this. I mean, we do this because it's fun. I do it because I feel like I need to. I need to like have that moment of just unabashed fun that there's no pressure. Those moments of in that song, like me, Sam, Billy, Tommy, just like vibing off of each other's energies, like that's why we're doing it. And I find that when you're being genuine and honest about your intentions and just really doing something where you're having fun, you know, the people will pay attention.
My friends and my family and everyone in my social media network, they're very excited about it for sure. Yeah. They're always sharing it. Like the second we started doing it.
I was gonna like, Billy's mom loves us.
My grandma calls it the Raptors. She says, oh, Bill, like I saw that Raptors video you did. I just love it. But it's been great. Like even around town, I've had a few instances where I went to play a solo gig and someone didn't know was like, hey, are you the guitarist in Love Raptor? I was like, yeah.
That's awesome.
Isn't that crazy?
We had a very funny situation like that happen recently with Seth Gleer, who at the time of this podcast releasing will probably be one of the last videos that we had just put out. He apparently did this huge Zoom concert thing for some charity. And at the end, they kind of did a meet and greet with the artist. And one of the people in the meet and greet kind of like very sheepishly approached him and said, are you the Seth Gleer that plays with Love Raptor? And and he was telling us a story, like it made my like year to hear that, because Seth has an incredible following in his own right. So the fact that like somebody would find him through us, I was just like that. Wow, that's incredible.
The episode that came out in December, we talked all about Phil Ramone, who was Billy's producer, you know, from 77 through 86.
So I got to work with him actually, but continue.
You worked with Phil?
I worked with Phil Ramone.
Really?
Yes.
I got to hear that story.
Oh yeah, go on.
Okay. So like I mentioned before, I'm a music producer, sound engineer, mixer. I do all of this stuff. Back when I was first getting my start, like 12 years ago, I was working at Carriage House Studios in Stamford, Connecticut, and this really incredible singer-songwriter, Rachel Sage, was doing a record, and Phil Ramone was producing 2 songs. I was the house engineer, the kind of assistant engineer on that session, and he was leading the ship. Yeah, he was just incredible, man. He's a force of nature. At this point, this was like very late in his career of like, you know, oh my God, it's Phil Ramone coming into the studio. You know, he just piloted the ship, man. He just ran the freaking show with with gusto and with a lot of, I don't know how it was the best way to put it, very, very forceful direction. Like he knew what he wanted. He went in and he was just like, yeah, you're going to do it this way, and it's going to be a hit.
Yep.
And one thing I'll never forget, I stepped out for a little while, and the engineer on the session, he, we're all younger guys. I mean, he was a few years older than me, but we're still, we're this younger generation of cats. I remember just like I was in the back of the room kind of working on the tape machine, and they're listening to playback, and Phil and the engineer, like he kind of takes his hands off the board, and he's just kind of sitting there at the speakers listening to things, and Phil just kind of like looks at him, and he kind of smacks his shoulder, and he says, "Never take your hands off of the faders." I was looking at him like, and he was like very serious. It wasn't like a joking. He was just like, never take your hands off of the faders.
Wow.
Like you should always be trying to make the mix better, even if it's a rough mix. Just like do your job, be on it. So it was amazing being around somebody who like had that kind of work ethic and just demanded that sort of competence and perfection out of people. And it working with him and a couple of other, incredible guys like that, it was one of the things that kind of instilled the work ethic that I feel like I have in me. And, I'm not necessarily as strict or as stringent as he is, but that was one of those moments where I was like, oh yeah, you really have to have your shit together to be in this industry.
I've heard so many stories off the air about the Billy sessions he did, and there were times like, the song My Life, Liberty DeVito, the drummer, hates it. He's like, yeah, when we were starting to work on it in the studio, he's like, I don't want to play this disco bullshit. And Phil Ramone, so he's like, you're going to sit there and play what I tell you to play. You've been in this business, what, 10 minutes? And he's like, and now I look and I have a My Life gold record on the wall. So I guess he knows.
Probably my favorite Billy Joel song.
Real quick, what was Phil the producer for The Stranger, the album The Stranger?
That was the first one. He did The Stranger all the way through the bridge, so 77 to 86.
Okay, yeah. You said 77. I thought that was when The Stranger came out. That's one of my favorite albums of all time.
And he was the first producer who wanted to use Billy's road band, and that's what sealed the deal.
Mm.
Yeah.
Like George Martin was going to do that album, but he wanted all session guys, and Billy's like, nope.
Wow.
Sorry.
See, I would have loved to hear that record produced by George Martin. It would have been very, very different.
Well, Mikhail, Billy, thanks a lot for talking with us. Do you want to tell people where they can find your work?
YouTube.com/Love Raptor, Facebook.com/Love Raptor Funk. I always like to direct people to our Patreon, Patreon.com/Love Raptor. Throw us a couple of bucks, keep us open, and you'll get MP3 downloads of everything we do.
Just search Billy Ruegger. You'll find me. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Billy, last name spelled Ruegger.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Thanks for listening, and thanks for having us on, you guys. It's always an honor to talk to somebody who digs what we do.